activity, we decided to extend this activity with a series of promotional and training activities within the Africa Connect 3 project, which is implemented by the Ubuntu Alliance, ASREN, Giant, and WACREN, and this in order to support the growing community, Eduroam community. The resulting African Eduroam Roadshow, in collaboration with the Ubuntu Alliance and ASREN, will include annual events hosted at different times by the 3 regional RANs, following a program jointly developed with African Eduroam national roaming operators. These training events and deployathons will usually be dedicated to NRANs that are current or potential NROs. This is to expand or establish Eduroam operations. From time to time, there will be promotional activities targeted at raising awareness of Eduroam and linking stakeholders that can add value to the service in Africa. This will involve supporting participation in the global Eduroam community. This first event to kick off the campaign is open to all and aimed at providing an overview of Eduroam as it stands today and showcasing Eduroam deployments by African NROs. And I'm sure this will not be the last one. We will for sure organize future events like this. The Eduroam infrastructure, the regional Eduroam infrastructure run by WACREN and the Ubuntu Alliance will be strengthened, and its management will be expanded to include skilled members of the community in an African operations team that will complement our staff's effort. We want to be as inclusive as possible and take advantage of all skills we have in our region, and with the support also with partners outside our region, in Europe, in the US, and elsewhere. So thank you all for attending this event, especially the facilitators, Helen, Miroslav, Guy, Brian, Kennedy, and Emmanuel Togo, and Omo. And finally, let me use this opportunity to thank very much the European Commission for their continued support, especially through the funding of the Africa Connect 3 project. I wish you all a successful webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Boubacar Barry, for setting the stage for this morning to afternoon's event. All right, so now we'll move straight into action. We're going to hear from Mr. Kennedy Aseda. He's giving us update on regional Eduroam governance. So, Mr. Kennedy Aseda is, he happens to be the Chief Technology Officer for Kenneth. Kenneth is the NRO in Kenya. He's been working there since 2008. He holds MSc in Information Security, BSc in Electrical and Electronic Engineering. And at Kenneth, he oversees the technology strategy of Kenneth, of the NRO. That includes network, data center, cloud, and cybersecurity. He also represents Kenneth as a member of the Global Eduroam Governance Committee as one of regional representatives of Africa, tasked with defining technological and administrative improvement for the operation of Eduroam at the global level. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear Mr. Kennedy Aseda.
Thank you very much for the comprehensive introduction. I was just expecting a simple introduction as Kennedy Aseda, who is a GAGC representative, but thank you. It's good to see Boubacar Barry after quite some time. It's good to see that he's still of good health. And I would like to thank WACREN for the invitation, not only for me, but for the other panelists, as well as my two other colleagues who we are with in the GGC to come and speak here today. Because my session is just to probably also just set some stage and give some update on where we are as a region and how, basically a summary of how Eduroam is governed. I will try my best, because I was given 10 minutes, I will try my best to use at most that 10 minutes, and then we can move to the more interesting things that will be coming after my session. So I'll just give a brief of where we are and the agenda that I'll be covering. The first one will be Eduroam governance, basically how Eduroam is governed, so that for those who really don't have the details can have a little more information. Then what we believe probably some of the ideas we have on what the needs of the region are. And then finally is how you can join the community globally as well as in our region. So first I'll just handle the Eduroam governance. I believe my slides are visible. So I've just shared the slides, and there is a link there on the GGC charter. So the Eduroam has a governance structure, and currently there is the version 2 of the charter that has 4 key main areas in the charter. The first one is on the appointment of the secretariat for Eduroam. Then second is the structure of the global governance of Eduroam. The third area is on the duties of the Global Eduroam Governance Committee, and then the final section is on the Eduroam Compliance Statement. So as most of you are aware, to be authorized to operate the Eduroam service as a roaming operator, a potential roaming operator is requested to sign the Eduroam Compliance Statement, which is then presented to the GGC for their recommendation. The roaming operator can be an NRO, yes, but also does not necessarily have to be an NRO. So it is not defined specifically that the RO has to be an NRO. So next, I'll just cover the duties of the Eduroam Secretariat as captured in the charter. So the first area is on the appointment of members of the GGC, basically those who have been nominated by roaming confederations, so a group of roaming operators, as well as appointment of members who bring some expertise into the GGC or are experts in the field. Then the second key area is to approve changes or new, basically changes to the Eduroam Compliance Statement. And the third key area is to authorize the approval or removal of a roaming operator to operate the Eduroam roaming service. The other two are not very critical, but yeah, if you have a read at the charter, you'll be able to see. So currently the composition of the GGC, so there are representatives, 15 representatives from 5 regions, and the regions are ideally aligned to basically the internet registries. So like in Africa, it's aligned to the countries that are part of Afrinic. And at the moment, we have 3 representatives: Emmanuel Togo, who will be presenting here today, Guy. So Emmanuel from Garnet, Ghana, and Guy House from Tenet, who will be presenters, as well as myself. So the current team was actually nominated by NROs in the region on July 22nd, 2020 for a 2-year term. But for myself, hopefully I'll be able to transition after the 1 year so that we are able to give new ideas to come in for the region. So currently there are NROs that already have approved the signed compliance statements, as well as some that are in pilot. Now, next on the duties of the Global Eduroam Governance Committee. So basically, as defined in the charter, the GGC is tasked with the duty of updating the compliance statement for Eduroam in consultation with roaming operators. And then the second key area is to collect signed Eduroam compliance statements and recommend either for approval or not, and then also recommend removal of members from operating the Eduroam service. And then another key item is to advise the Secretariat as well as stakeholders about operations of Eduroam, including investigating complaints that may arise due to either compliance or non-compliance to the statement. Now, what are some of the areas or key areas that probably the committee is looking at or discussing? So there are many other areas, but I opted to pick out two that will also be interesting for our region. So, and probably in collaboration with our regional RENs as well as the NROs, we will be able to have sessions and bring in some experts also to help demystify and share the experiences in these areas. So the first one is on open roaming, which basically is a roaming federation that enables basically secure Wi-Fi experience globally. It's basically something close to Eduroam. Initially started at Cisco, but now there are more and more providers who are rolling out open roaming. So at the moment, the governance committee is looking at what open roaming means to Eduroam and as well as how Eduroam can actually participate in open roaming. So there are discussions in that area. The other key area is on WPA3, which is basically improving the security using technically stronger cryptographic keys. Now, quickly on regional needs. So we have been having discussions also with the roaming operators in our region, and some of the key areas that we are looking at to work with even the regional RENs as well as NROs is on awareness and capacity building. So that will be working together to see how we can have more awareness of Eduroam in our regions and have sessions similar to this. Then the next item is on having an operations team, because at the moment we really in our region don't have a proper structure in terms of how the region handles operations matters, from gathering of statistics, incident handling, service reports, having some structure on how we govern ourselves, how we select our representatives. So we are having some discussions around that, and in the course of the year, we'll probably have some structures in place to just improve on how some of the areas are dealt with. The next is also on service operation, whether we'll probably have some centralized arrangement, or we still work with our regional RENs to ensure that we are able to deal with fault tickets and all other reports in regard to Eduroam in our area. Now, the last item is a call to join the community. There are those of us who are on Eduroam Slack channel. So you can join the general channel, but there's also the Africa channel. So I encourage you to join so that you can have general discussions as well as share experiences with other peers, and we see how we can actually improve basically the visibility of Eduroam, as well as help resolve any problems that may arise in terms of operations of Eduroam. So I think that's it from me. I'll hand over to Eva. I'm hopeful I have not taken too much additional time from what was allocated. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy Aseda, for giving us a peep into what is happening in the regional Eduroam governance. Thank you very much, and we hope you stay on for the question and answer session. But I'm sure a few people will have some questions to ask. Right, so next we will move to Mr. Miroslav Milinovic. Right, Miroslav is the Eduroam Service Manager, a giant for 3 projects, and he is going to take us on a journey into the Eduroam technology itself and what the service is all about. Over to you, Miroslav. Miroslav, if you can hear me, please you can take over. I think Miroslav is muted. Miroslav, please, if you can hear me, you can take over, please.
Just did. I can't start my video, so you will survive without my my face thing, but slides should be shared in just a second. Yeah. So I hope you see my slides now.
Yes. Thank you.
You see the slides, or the one slide, or only the okay? This one should do. Slide is okay now.
It's okay now. Thank you.
Yeah. Much. So thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for the introduction. I have quite a number of slides here, so I planned for 40 minutes presentation, and it ended up with half an hour. So I might be tempted to rush a bit. Nevertheless, I shared my slides with the organizers, so it's up to you to study them later on or ask the questions now or whatever. And yes, indeed, I at this moment work for the University Computing Center, University of Zagreb, Croatia, but serve in joint project as the Eduroam service manager or owner, whatever you're going to call it. So in principally, I'm leading the effort in providing the service and developing it further. And I actually started to play with Eduroam way back in 2003 when the original idea was presented by Klaus Wirthaus, SurfNet. So yeah, I'm pretty old in that. About the content of this presentation, I'm going to provide the information about the Eduroam in a nutshell, how you're going to sell it to your constituency, technology overview, the information about how we envisage service should be organized or is organized at the moment, and then the supporting services, those nice teeny bits or not so bits, which we put around the original roaming service so it has better value for the end users as well as the people who are providing it. And then just a slide on a future work. If you feel like something should go faster, just let me know, and if there are immediate questions, I'm happy to answer them as I speak. So, Eduroam service in a nutshell. When we say a service, we actually mean a bit more than just a network connectivity. But Eduroam has been built and still is with the bright idea of providing secure, consistent, and uniform network access service inside the boundaries of a certain set of organizations which share the similar value and the idea. And at this moment, we are proud to say it's a global service. Maybe there is one continent where Eduroam is not available, Antarctica, I think. Others do have it. Initial motto was open your laptop and be online, although these days it means like you don't open your notebooks and tablets, you're still online. There is the infrastructure part, which actually provides the possibility to connect and connection to the net. And there is the supporting infrastructure. We feel that both are very important, so I will spend some time on both. And maybe a bit more information is when you see a picture. So here is the way how we present a service and how we see the roles and the values for each and every player, actor in this global endeavor. By no means users can access Eduroam in this time, at this time in 106 countries, roaming operators as we count them, and as my predecessor just explained what the roaming operator should be or is. And then there are some research and education institutions which actually do provide the service. So this service is really highly distributed, and we do rely on each and every person and actor in this chain to provide a quality service. So if Eduroam fails, it fails at some institution, not at the level of national roaming or roaming operator, or even at the higher level. People might be a bit confused with the role of JANT here and European service in respect to Africa. We indeed provide the supporting tools, supporting services which are available globally, no charge at this moment. So when I will speak about the services, supporting services, those are meant for you to be used. People sometimes ask, and probably you will be asked at home, why on earth we need Eduroam? But it's quite clear. Today, our researchers, teachers, students, collaborators travel with devices which are wireless LAN enabled. They want transparent, secure network access, regardless of the place where they are. And as a value of Eduroam, we discovered over time that it's not only for roaming, it's for the network access. At this moment, I'm sitting in the office, and one of my devices is connected to the local wireless. Guess what? It's Eduroam, although I'm sitting at home. So Eduroam, as it is the way of accessing and using authenticated, authorized, secure network access wherever you are. We somehow emphasize the roaming part, but it's the way of doing wireless LAN actually. It's not only good for roamers, it's also good for administrators. Over time, you discover it reduces your effort in maintaining network access. And by the way, it all started way back in 2003. But important thing on this slide is to just clarify to yourself that these are the requirements which we initially set up, and we still provide a service that actually does that. Identify users uniquely at the edge of the network. This means that we guarantee security, data integrity, but also privacy for the users. Eduroam is proud to say that we are in line with the European GDPR, with any other private data protection laws which have been set up across the globe. So your identity has not been revealed to the third parties. It's only known to your real identity. It's only known to your IDP, to your home organization. Guest usage is enabled. The system is scalable. By no means, we have millions of users. If it won't scale, it won't work at this moment. And it works quite well. It's easy to install and use. Maybe here we can discuss a bit, but at this moment, we are in a position that you configure your device once, and there is a perfect tool called CAT for that. And that's it. The openness is, of course, here because we are not tied to any proprietary technology, neither software nor hardware. The standards used here are actually ISO standards, known standards for the Wi-Fi network. And saying that, this was actually a short information about the Eduroam. And I would be glad if you want to share these slides or part of the slides when you inform your users, your partners, your managers, why Eduroam is important, why to use it, and what actually it offers on a higher level. A short technology overview, information about the technology that we called the Eduroam. So first, just to clarify, authentication, this is the user who it says it is, he is, she is. So that is being done by the home institution, by the IDP, identity provider. The authorization allowing somebody to the network, granting the access, is determined by the visited institution. Although person has authenticated properly, you still can ban him or her from your net if you want. Again, the concepts, home institution, same thing as identity provider. That instance, that subject has to provide certain identity management database, whatever it is behind. And it has to provide the interface between that and the Radius server. Radius we use as a transport mechanism for the authentication traffic, for the information about the user going from the identity provider to the service provider. And the service provider is the visited institution, the place that provides the service, that has the wireless network in place, access points, LANs, whatever. And they also can have, probably should have a Radius server. And they are responsible for the authorization part. Key technologies. So the security is here based on the family of standards. 802.1x. This X stands for a number of different letters which serve for different parts of the standards, addressing different items in the whole scenario. But in general, this is the family of standards that do a layer 2 port-based network access control. Why it is superior to the others? Why it is better? Because this means that until identity is proven, only the authentication traffic, the EAP traffic, EAP is specific protocol, extensible authentication protocol, only that traffic is allowed. This means that nobody can do HTTP or DNS or whatever. Until identity is proven, your client is more or less blocked to do the authentication. So this is why we think it's secure. And of course, the whole concept is to protect credentials. They are encrypted, and they are encrypted, and all the data is encrypted using dynamic keys. By the way, we are talking about the wireless, but as the user is detected at the network active element, it could be either access point or a wired switch. So if you envisage, let's say, a student dormitory in which the students would still connect their computers with the line, with the wire to the wired switch in the wall, it's again possible. It's again Eduroam. It's wired Eduroam only. It sounds weird, but it is doable, and we have even very large instances of such a service across the globe. There is also one more important thing, that is the integration with Vlan Assignment. The name of the standard is .1q in particular, and this one actually allows you as the service provider to detect the visitors and put them in a different VLAN. People are afraid, okay, will my guests, the roamers, which I actually accept to my net, will they be now allowed to access my intranet? How can I separate them? There is the standard. It's a part of the whole suite. So just do it, use it. I will have a slide on that later on. Authentication based on EAP. Okay, we have a whole family of these standards. There are different authentication mechanisms. TLS, which actually means that the client has to have its own certificate, or TTLS, or PIP, where people authenticate with the username and the password. But still, I mean, all of that is secure, and in all aspects, we are using the TLS tunnel. This means that nobody can listen the communication. Passwords are protected. Okay, there is one possible problem, but later about it. Then how the roaming works. Again, on radius proxying. Radius is very old. Transport protocol for authentication mechanism has been developed way back. Maybe somebody listening here was not even born when it was developed for the for dial-in access services yeah, it was 90s and 80s actually. It's very scalable thingy, and you know, really a piece that can carry a lot of traffic. And the trust fabric, yes, technical radius hierarchy actually does that for us. But it's important to underline that there is also the policy, documents and contracts that define the responsibilities of users, institutions, and roaming operators. I sometimes use the word national roaming operator, although the roaming operators in principle can serve regions, not only the countries. They can serve part of the countries indeed too. So how this works? I wonder that a lot of you have seen this picture. This is, yes, again, very old one, but just in few words. So a device wants to, or a user using a device wants to join the net, and the device actually discovers SSID Eduroam in the air and wants to connect to the appropriate associate, we would say, in the wireless world, with the appropriate access point, or with the wire with the appropriate switch. And then the authentication information is sent to that device, and that device makes a decision to continue with the access request to the radio server, which actually analyzes the request and sees if it is local one, and then looks at the identity database backend, or if it is not, then it sends the request to the hierarchy, to the radius hierarchy, where based on the roaming principle is being analyzed, and then eventually appropriate radio server is being found. It connects its own database, the user database, returns the response yes or no, accept or reject, and then the original service provider's radio server gets the response. If it is okay, then it is being sent to the authenticator, and the device is granted the access to the appropriate VLAN. So this is the way how this works. I hope everybody knows that. The forwarding user credential goes through this kind of a hierarchy, and although it looks like a complicated endeavor, that is being fulfilled in a fraction of a second. More or less, it's important to understand that it's up to the service provider to analyze the request for connection, and based on the realm part of the user identity, make a decision if it is for its own service or it should be sent to the upper hierarchy. And then, of course, for instance, here is the Tom from Denmark trying to connect in Portugal. So the institution server says, okay, this is for Denmark, not for me. Send it up to Portugal national server, and then that one says, okay, it's not for me. Send it to the higher level. At the top level, they see, okay, there is the country server where I should send it, and then it goes. If you see here the analogy to the DNS, that's right. That's true. So for forwarding the user credentials, what we actually use is we use what is called realm-based proxying. It's DNS-like domain system in which usernames are in format user at realm. So it's quite important that these realms do exist. They actually map to the DNS domain of the very identity provider, and and users should know about it. Otherwise, yeah, roaming is not possible. How the hierarchy of radio servers work? They share the secrets between them. So radio servers authenticate each other by using the shared secret. This is, of course, a symmetric key, and by definition, it's not quite secure, one would say. So yes, indeed, we do have a better solution called RADSEC, but a bit later on that. So how this forwarding of user credentials works, for instance, in Europe, I already said it. So there is the European Confederation top-level server. We actually have two. In Netherlands and Denmark, they also serve as global top-level servers, so they cover the whole globe. And each or top-level confederation servers have a list of connected country domains. They do have the African ones too, and the African proxy. And each of them accept requests from connected countries and then forwards them to the appropriate federation level radio servers, or to the other countries, or to the other top-level servers, for instance, for Asia and Pacific. And here it is quite important that each of the layers of the hierarchy do it work appropriately. You could imagine how we could end up in infinity loops if we don't pay attention to what we are doing. Like, for instance, national level or roaming operator level radio server sends up whatever trash it got to the top level, and then top level sees that trash and send it back, and we kind of end up in the infinite loop. So one should pay attention how you set up your either regional or top level, or of course federation level radio server. And yes, the idea about can we do something about the security of our radius hierarchy, because this shared secret might not be optimal solution. And that is the answer called radius over TLS, or RADSEC. I mean, if you want to speak proper IATF wording, don't use a word RADSEC, use radius over TLS. The IP addresses and shared secrets of radio servers are obsolete. We do TLS certificates. So radio servers in hierarchy actually kind of discover each other by using the TLS certificate and trust each other, establish the trust based on the certificates. And of course, certificates as the PKI idea are asymmetric cryptography, and then by definition they are more secure than plain radius infrastructure. But don't be, afraid. This plain radius infrastructure served us for what, 15 plus years or more. So it's not a big deal. But the flexibility that we get here is dynamic discovery. So what actually can happen, I mean, the picture will serve better. To make this happen, you have to put the NAPTER, the pointer record, in the DNS. That would allow a certain radio server to discover there is appropriate, let's say, IDP server somewhere in the world. So assume that our friend Stefan is at holidays in New Guinea and wants to connect to the Eduroam. And he has Steph at edu.lu and wants to connect to the service at guinea.pg server. So that server would normally send the request to the roaming operator, national roaming operator, that would connect APAN, and then the APAN would connect European top-level server would connect Luxembourg server, and Luxembourg would find edu.lu home organization and back. Can we get rid of something? Indeed, there is a possibility, and of course, user credentials will just follow the information, will follow the path from the red line. But can we get rid of something of that? Yes, indeed. If the Papua New Guinea server can find using the RADSEC, using the NAPTA record, find the appropriate address for the .lu server, then the top level hierarchy is top level servers are not needed anymore. And even better, maybe Guinea.pg server can find the NAPTA record for edu.lu. Okay, you would say now we are talking about quite a lot of discovering, so a number of entries in the DNS. At this moment, we are more or less experimenting with this. It's not a widely distributed service, but is being used to reduce the traffic between the top level servers. So country to country, it works. It's enough to set up at the level of your country. So assume, for instance, .lu or .ka or .ca. You set up the pointer to the appropriate radio server so others can discover you. So ensuring user credential security. What is important here to underline? Yes, of course, we are reducing the possibility by using TLS type protocols. We are reducing the possibility for somebody to eavesdrop the traffic and somehow steal the password, username and the password. But there is still possibility to do the man in the middle attack. So to put your radio server or whatever somewhere in the net and present yourself as the IDP. For that purpose, we recommend the mutual server authentication. So the situation in which the end user would in turn check the certificates or the validity of the IDP against which it is doing the authentication. That's the reason why we insist to the users to set up their clients in a way that they check the certificate of the home IDP radio server. And that's the reason why we actually introduced the CAT service, and we actually ask you all to use it, because this guarantees secure setup for the client, for the end user, and thus reduces the risk of losing your identity to the zero.
Hello, Myro. I sincere apologies for.
Yes?
Can you please in a minute or two?
Can I continue?
Yes. Can you wrap up in about 2 minutes? So
in 2 minutes, very hardly. But okay, so let's skip few slides, and then let me just inform you. Just we were talking about the Kennedy did the information about the policy, but if you are setting up any kind of the service, just think about this stack. There is the operational team which operates, but at least at the European level, there is federation level personnel, institution level personnel, and end users. You have to have this hierarchy in your mind when you're setting up whatever you do, because as you continue through the hierarchy, the number of users and questions actually grows or changes. I wanted to show you a bit of statistics just to clarify and explain that we do have quite a lot of traffic. Regardless of the COVID, Eduroam survived. And if you look carefully at this picture, you will see that the national traffic is actually much higher than international. And even here, we count only the national traffic using the FTX on a sample of European 34 countries in Europe. But this shows that there is the ratio 1 to 10. 1 of national authentications or roamings, international to the 10 of national ones. And we don't count the Eduroam usage in your own institution. So this is actually proof that Eduroam is there to stay and it's heavily used. If you need that, you can borrow that for convincing your managers that Eduroam is a good stuff. Supporting services. So I have no time, but yeah, that's pity. But in principle, we have a number of those. They are all based on Eduroam database. So people, good people of Africa, if you have Eduroam set up, make sure that you are sending the appropriate information to the Eduroam database, because this makes your work with all the other important services that you want to do quite easier and simpler. Because the model that we use actually relies on the fact that all the information that we need is in the Eduroam database, so we can provide more support to the IDPs, to the SPs, to the end users, to the federation operators, and of course to the general public. The services, actually, aside of the maps that you probably have seen and like, and if not, you are invited to check it. There is the monitoring part, which actually allows us to check the health of the servers. There is the ones that checks the servers, then about the infrastructure, and for those who can log in into the system, and federation operators or roaming operators are invited to do so. You can even check the health of the whole infrastructure. So you can send, for instance, a request that resembles me sitting somewhere in the Vlan Secretariat and trying to connect to the Eduroam. So it will send a request from the Africans proxy servers to the Europeans, to the Croatian one, to check if this path of infrastructure is working. There is the uptake service, which actually provides us to build the information about the traffic, and then provide you also the information about the traffic your users are making in the international and national scenery. This is quite important if you want to report back how Eduroam is being used in your country. Eduroam CAT a must-have to do the proper setup for the end users. It's quite easy stuff. And now, just a figure, since it started in 2013, so 8 years ago, we have over 32,400,000 downloads of appropriate configuration. We have over 4,000 supported IDPs there. So almost everybody is here. If you are not, just take a chance, do it. What it actually does, it provides end user simple interface to select your identity provider, download and execute the installer. And for administrators, overview of the settings, do more information about the setting, and even these days, verify the setup, do some part of diagnostics, so you can make sure that your IDP is properly connected and alive in the sense of the global Eduroam service availability. Last but not the least, there is Eduroam Managed IDP service. So for those who don't have a skills or capacity to run their own radius IDP infrastructure, we do it for you. It's important just that a roaming operator is the one, as with the CAT, the model is the same. Roaming operator is the one who onboards IDPs, who lists IDPs, who can then use such a service. Yeah, so I'm rushing, apologies for that. To the future work, and future work includes indeed open roaming. Open roaming, actually, for those who are more into technology, open roaming actually builds on top of the thing, or makes use of top of the things that used to be called Passpoint or Hotspot 2.0. So our .1x family got another letter U is the one to look for, because with that technology we were actually we would be somehow forced to use the RATSEC one for the credentials transfer, but also the SSIDs are not used anymore. So there are so the devices and the networks negotiate the roaming consortium you're gonna be joining. And as the open roaming is supported by the WBA Alliance, here it's quite important to understand that Eduroam is big enough player to act here as the roaming consortium that would be enabled around the open roaming world. Stay tuned for that. This is still under even some technical things has to be changed or adjusted. What will come up in a year or so is managed SP. So the service which will provide you with the possibility to set up a DSP in a hosted manner. So don't mess with that. You only put access points in somewhere. Certificate provisioning redesign, so to make RADSEC less complicated, getting certificates for RADSEC less complicated, more diagnostics towards the end user diagnostic. And then we plan to also introduce, especially in Europe, the roaming operator audit, which actually means that we're going to check if people are following the bylaws of the policies in a proper manner. Because again, I started saying that it's important to understand that Eduroam is a distributed service relying on a trust between partners. So it's quite important to make sure that people do their best and we don't have a weak links in such a service. Saying that, I thank you for listening. My apologies for rushing through the slides. It looks like, you know, Omo and I discussed about the 40 minutes and I got 30. And then, you know, anyhow, there are a lot of things that I kind of start talking about, and maybe a lot of questions, and I'm willing to provide yet another specialized or shortened set of slides for any of topics you find interesting or important. And saying that, I see well-known face of class whom I mentioned with the slide number 3 or 4. So hello, class. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you very much, Miroslav, for such an insight.
And again, apologies for being such a, you know, for running through the slides. Still, they are available. And again, my offer to repeat some part, especially regarding the supporting services, is you know, open.
Engaged. A lot of things that you could mention. We'll be able to mention them as people ask questions and as we engage. Right. Thank you very much for that very insightful presentation. I'm sure a whole lot of us who use Eduroam, you know, understand how the infrastructure operates and what is behind the service. But Miroslav has given a new walkthrough about how Eduroam works. Thank you. So now moving to question and answers, but I will hand over now to Dr. Abubakar Barry to say a word.
Yes, thank you, Efa. Actually, just a few words. I first of all want to acknowledge the presence of Mrs. Stephanie Trulle-Borens, who is our project officer at the European Commission for the Africa Connectivity Project. I mentioned the European Commission as being a continued and very important support for WACRAN and ASTRAN and the Ubuntu Alliance. So we acknowledge her presence. Thank you very much, Stephanie, for making the time. And Klaus is with us. I'm sure he wouldn't, I know Klaus, and I'm sure he would not appreciate if I say we have the honor for him joining us. But let's say we have the privilege of Klaus Wirenga joining us. Klaus is the inventor of Eduroam. So Klaus, please, if you can just say a few words to the community that has gathered today. Thank you.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think you're right. I don't feel very much about the word honor. in this case, for multiple reasons. Because I don't like it in general, but in this specific case also it feels like too much honor, because yes, the idea was mine, but I actually think that Eduroam is very much what the concept Ubuntu is about. It's about I am because you are, and Eduroam is really on so many levels the work of many people, and the value of Eduroam is because we are all in it together. I think you have a really fantastic lineup of speakers, and some of the speakers have been main drivers of Eduroam worldwide. Miro is definitely one of the biggest driving forces in Eduroam worldwide, not only by building Eduroam in Europe into a service, but also by providing training and helping out people around the world. So it is a bit a shame that he was cut short. But I'm sure that he's willing to help you out if you need any help. There's one thing that I think is important to bring out here. Miro shared a lot of information about Eduroam, about the technology behind it, etc. And the one thing that I think is important is that yes, it is a complex technology, and the finer details are absolutely not for the faint of heart. But the good news is you don't have to worry about that. People like Miro, like Guy, have been looking into this, have sorted this all out, and you can benefit incredibly from the knowledge they have built up. So I don't think there is any reason why you shouldn't do Eduroam, and that brings me back to this whole Ubuntu concept. Eduroam is almost by definition the embodiment of the value being the value of the many. In the beginning I used to say things like the person that bought the first telephone must have been an idiot because he had nobody to call, and I think that is very much true for Eduroam as well. On the one hand, yes, it is very useful to have Eduroam in your own university and in your own NREN, but the true value of Eduroam comes from the fact that we're in this all together, and that makes me particularly happy to see that the three regional networks in Africa came together and together drive the further growth of Eduroam in Africa. It is good for you. I'm very happy for you, but it's good for us all that Africa will be well represented on the global Eduroam map. So I wish you lots of happy Eduroam days. Thank you.
Thank you so much, class. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bakabari. Thank you so much, class.
Eduroam stands for Education Roaming. It provides secure and easy-to-use Wi-Fi access in thousands of locations in more than 100 countries. Once you've connected for the first time, you never need to enter your details again. Eduroam will automatically connect you whenever you're in range of an Eduroam hotspot. The best thing is, the hotspot you're using never sees your details. So wherever you're roaming, you can love to Eduroam. Eduroam. Simple, easy, and secure.
Okay, so now we'll move into the interactive session, and I'll invite Omo Oaya, the Chief Strategy Officer, to take over from here.
Hello, everyone. First of all, my apologies to Miro for having to rush the slides. I haven't seen any questions in the questions and answers, so maybe this is the time to sort of take them. If you have any questions on Miro's presentation, or what we can do, Miro, if there were any parts of that presentation, because I noticed there's one part where you were about to talk about the infrastructure of IDPs and SPs. I don't think you dealt with that. So maybe, because that's right after this, I want to sort of get a sense of who is in the room with a small interactive survey. But we do have time for questions. And if there's if that was important in your presentation, maybe we can revisit those slides.
I tried to present technology from one side of the point, the notion of the service, and of course the supporting part. The supporting part lists certain services which are actually provided by JANT, but for the global community. So there are some things that you could take from the list. But the most important part is, if you are a roaming operator, it's quite important for you to join the Eduroam database with your data. Thus, you actually qualify for using configuration assistance tool, managed IDP service, some part of monitoring, and some other simple solutions and services from the webs, which actually make your life less complicated. The CAT is, I would say that the world is actually not good here, but why on earth you would kind of put yourself in a position that you help your users individually do the configuration, or risk they do it in an unsecure manner, when you have an automated system which will do that for you, and which will actually follow up on the changes in the operating systems. Just to tell you a latest story about the Android 11, you won't be able to set up 1.x Wi-Fi if you don't add the certificate of the radio server. It will just break, it won't work. So a user downloading certificate and putting it on their mobile phones can't believe it will happen. Use the CAT, it will help him or her to do it in a simpler and easier way. And you will be absolutely sure that the certificate will be right. So this is the tool, I would say, why not use it? I mean, again, I said a must is the wrong word here, but I highly recommend you to do it. It will also help you to understand if your configuration is right or not, because it has some additional sub-tools for the IDP administrator to check the health of the configuration, to see if his IDP answers properly, and so on and so on. So this, and then the FTX, the usage, information authentication counter, monitor.eduroam.org is really the place where you could have a look at it. It will allow you to collect the statistics and see where are your users coming from in international scenario, but also provide a certain information about the traffic, roaming traffic that you have in your country. We have some countries in the world which actually rely on that to report back to their management, to roaming operators management, explaining this is the traffic that we have. And even if you don't want to brag about the numbers, you still need those numbers to plan development of your infrastructure and to see where are the problems, probably, because it also collects the rejects. I mean, the monitor.eduroam site used to show the rejects too, but then as the rejects are much higher, And we can discuss why so many rejects are out there in the world because of the misconfigured devices, of course. People got afraid, oh, this is not working, so we get rid of the rejects. You can see them only if you log in as the appropriate roaming operator with the appropriate rights. So indeed, these are the services. But again, if you check through the monitor.eduroam.org and through the wiki, you will see what is the supporting services that you expect to use mostly. And of course, we are building new ones. So here the input is also important. As we build with the community, the information back, like this is usable, this could be better if you do this or that, it's quite important. So help us out too. Yeah, we're talking too much, and
yeah, that's fine. I can see there's
VLANs are managed and assigned by radio server. Do VLANs are managed and assigned by radio server? Oh, this is 1.1q, and this is by radio server. So you need the radio servers and your active network devices actually cooperate in doing that. But don't forget about the fact that the access points might have the elements of radios in them. So it really depends how, okay, wrong word, but I can't find a better one, how stupid your access points are, how intelligent the software there is. But the standards to look for is support for .1q if the Vlan assignment is in place.
right. I see that Guy has answered a sort of related question. If anyone wants to speak or ask a question, please let us know. If you're an attendee, we'll let you have the mic and you can chip in. So this question was from Hassan Buhadu, and his question was if VLANs are managed as and assigned by radio server or access points. Guy, I know you've already answered it, but do you want to just sort of talk about that a little bit?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, I mean, Miro sort of covered this. I mean, it does depend on what your access points are capable. It also depends on how complex your deployment is. But in a large campus environment, using radius assigned VLANs, in other words, setting which VLAN a user ends up on based on a radius response, lets you differentiate between people who are part of your organization and people who are not part of your organization. And that lets you decide what rights they get, what network rights they get. Best practice would be to assign your own users to a different VLAN to visitors on your campus. And that would be best practice however you did this. And using radius in Eduroam allows you to use Eduroam as your normal SSID for your institution.
Thanks, Guy. We got Bismarck hand up, so I'm going to let him speak. It's probably faster. So Bismarck.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a techie person, but I want to ask a question in more commonsensical way. In my organization, users have to, for example, faculty have to go, take their laptops or their phones to the infrastructure guys for them to set them up physically. Students also have to go to computer labs for their phones to be set up for them for the first time. I want to find out, is there a way that can be done so that your username and the password is given to you, so you don't need to go see any infrastructure person to set you up on this Eduroam? Because considering the number of students and the faculty that we have, they each cannot go to the computer lab or the infrastructure guys for them to be set up on the Eduroam. If you can advise me so that I can educate the guys in charge of Eduroam in my university.
The obvious question I have right now is, do you use CAT, Configuration Assistance Tool? Because this tool actually is as simple and as secure as anybody can use it. If a person can kind of download something from the internet on his, her device, then CAT is that. CAT is designed for the end users to use it and configure their devices. So your IT personnel sets up CAT, says, okay, this is finished. Now end users can do it. End users see it at the internet, and they can just select their institution, click and point, that's it. So I would say first question for you is, do you use CAT? If not, advise your IT personnel to see the potential of using CAT here, because this is meant to resolve this issue you are talking about. I don't know if there are some people who are using CAT aside of Guy here, who could kind of provide the feedback on it works or it doesn't work, or if you are not using it, let's give it a try, people.
Kennedy here, to just also complement what Miro has said. You can actually remove the manual process of configuring end user devices using Eduroam CAT. So most of the configurations that are needed for the device to work, you can actually have them pre-done. Then now your users will just go to a web page or web portal, download what they need to download, and then set themselves up. So you can automate it so that you reduce the old way of end users having to bring their mobile devices or laptops for configuration at IT department or offices. So I think you can read more on Eduroam CAT, or you can also reach out to, whether it's Eduroam OT or some of us who are your African reps. We can actually give you some advice and also point you in the right direction on that request. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kennedy. So I don't see any hands raised. We did say we were going to run a little poll of the audience. I think I should start that now so we can stay on time. So just give me a second. It's let me get this going. So what I want to do at the beginning is sort of find out, where we do have registration data, but we can share this information now, and just sort of warm up by, hopefully you can see on your screen. If you go to www.menti.com on top, and type in that code, you'll be able to answer this question, and we can sort of get a mutual sense of who's and where we're connecting from. So we will know when you have actually gone and filled it, because it will show here. So please go to www.menti.com, type in 8344229, and we'll get a sense. You should be able to actually sort of, once you finish, there are about 3 or 4 questions in the slide deck. If you went through all of them, once you finish the first question, you can go to the next. Then I can sort of catch up with you as we go. But right now we have, and I think I got this slightly wrong. I needed a word cloud here, but please move on. I will present that better later. So there are a number of questions. So the first one I shared was where you're from, and another one that describes you best, amongst the following. One is NRO or network operator, network or sysadmin. The idea is to get whether these are NROs, network operators, researchers, or interested parties that we can sort of identify as we go on. So we just go back to the slides. We do have quite a few NROs in the room, which is really good. So those slides were useful. 10 out of 17 NROs. So that's not so bad for this first meeting, or 11. So that's looking good. I want to come back to these answers again. Oh yeah. So this question is really for NRO admins, and we wanted to get a sense of what percentage of the NROs in the room were aware of the monitoring and support services, those that were providing data in the new form, whether it's version 2 or version 1. I'm really pleased that there is no African roaming operator providing it with version 1. Oh, there is. Okay, spoke too soon. But still good. Most are providing with 2. We don't have all of them filling out yet. In terms of the topics you think you would like to see us deal with in future sessions, monitoring and visibility, monitoring and visitor access, African Managed IDP. Well, for the African Managed IDP, we have the eduid.africa service. I had actually typed into the chat while that was going on, which allows you to provide a SAML IDP, but it actually leverages the same database for to provide an Eduroam IDP. So basically, you just need to connect Radius with that to get the same service. So we can talk about that a little bit more. So this is a flow, monitoring, installation, and configuration. Anyway, but we sort of get a sense of what's there. Oh, we actually have 15 NROs. Fantastic. And lots of NREN and network operators. Okay, so I will stop the share now. I just thought we'd see that will change. Maybe I'll share that again so you can continue to fill it out, and I'll share that again towards the end, or at least sum it up at the end of the event. Effa, I think you can move on now.
Hey, thank you very much, Omar. So we'll move straight to Ghana, where I am, and Emmanuel Tuhu, who is the CTO for Garnet, one of the NROs in Ghana, will tell us what's happening in Ghana when it comes to Eduroam. Emmanuel, please, you can take over.
Hello, thank you very much, Effa, and thank you, Omar, for inviting me to this session. I'm very grateful for being here, and good afternoon or good evening to all. So let me share my screen. Just a second. Okay, so I hope my screen can be seen.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm talking about Eduroam deployment in Ghana, and Miroslav talked a lot about the technicality that is involved in the deployment, and I'm sure some of us, the thing was passing over our head, but just to bring us home, I will just walk you through what we do here in Ghana using all the knowledge that Miroslav has mentioned earlier. So my presentation will look at what Eduroam is. Miroslav has talked about that. Why Eduroam? What requirements we need to have that done here in Ghana, and where are we today in terms of deployment in Ghana, and challenges, and then the opportunities. But before we look at what Eduroam is, I think it would be good to see what the users are feeling when they see Eduroam. So I have some few quotes from some users when they get Eduroam working for them, the smile that it brings to their faces. So this is one lecturer who visited a campus in Ghana. I'm from another campus and got there first, it wasn't working. And then of course, have some issue with authentication, but eventually he realized what the problem was. I guess we're not using CAT, so that's resulted to that problem. But eventually when it works, he was excited and he was so happy to get Eduroam working for him and able to have access to internet without talking to an IT person at KNUST. KNUST is one of the Garnet member institution. So he got there, he was able to use it. A colleague told me that a friend visited DC and he got to a museum, and before he realized his phone was just talking, and then he looked on his phone and Eduroam was working. It's like an oxygen that he is breathing at that moment, because he really, really needed internet at that moment and wondering how he'll get internet at that point. So this is another friend who visited University of Ghana. And when he got to University of Ghana, it's like, wow, it's working for him. He's able to access internet at University of Ghana. And I'm sharing this thing. Omo got to Ghana back in 2018, and then he was connected to Eduroam. Yes, so what is this Eduroam? I think Miroslav has talked about it already, but just to just do a recap, and is, as he said, is the secure worldwide roaming access service developed for international research and education community. So we have a peculiar need that as you move from campus to campus, you need to send that information urgently, quickly. And gone are the days where you have to be looking for that IT guy on campus or looking for a mobile data to be able to send that information. And in some cases, the data is so huge and therefore you'll be spending a lot of money to do that. And so as you see, this allows researchers and staff and students to be able to get connected to internet with ease without having to worry about who will help me get connected and all that. So I work at University of Ghana and also working at or leading the technical team at Garnet. So we get students, international students coming to Legon, or University of Ghana. And when they got to campus, it's like, wow, there's Eduroam here, it's working. And they're so excited and they're able to reach out to their friends and family without having to look for an IT guy to help them out. So why Eduroam? So as I've said earlier on, it takes off all the headaches of administrators. I think a colleague just mentioned that students and faculty have to go and see some IT guy to be able to configure that for them. But in natural sense, this should be done easy or straightforward as was said earlier. But I think there's more work that needs to be done, and we'll come to that, the challenges that we have currently at the moment.
Hello, Emmanuel.
Have we lost Emmanuel?
We lost Emmanuel.
It looks like we have. Yes, connection dropped. Maybe he's working from home. Just give him a minute or so. Okay. And if not, we'll just sort of move on.
Okay, so whilst we wait, maybe we can get the next speakers ready.
Yes, but we also have 2 questions in the Q&A. I can see Miro is typing an answer, but this might be a good time to answer those questions. One of them is it possible to authenticate users through Google Workspace accounts as the DB source? Miroslav, can you just speak instead of typing? Guy,
I was about to answer that one, actually. The short answer is that Google doesn't support it, so it's not easy to do. At TNC 19, I presented about using IMAP to do it, and that presentation is still available, but that doesn't scale to large numbers. The answer right now is really not to use usernames and passwords, but to use certificates. And if you look at geteduroam.app, you will see SurfNet and Uninet's attempt to address exactly this problem.
Yeah, just in addition to that, so at Joint Operations, we plan to extend the managed IDP service with this feature. The feature will not be the Google only. It would be any situation in which you have a hosted IDP somewhere in the cloud. So if you have IDP in the cloud, let's say Microsoft Azure, not only with Google. So the get Eduroam, as Guy properly pointed you to, is actually the thing that would combine the SAML-based authentication, so electronic identity, with issuing appropriate credentials for Eduroam. So just stay tuned for that, or maybe send me an email in a month or so. We might be able to let you join the pilot.
Okay, so thank you very much, Miroslav. We are happy to have Emmanuel to go around again. Emmanuel, please, you can continue.
Yeah, okay. So Daniel dropped me a note, and we can see how you could kind of maybe test that. And of course, if anybody else is interested, we'll see how this will evolve. But we are pretty sure that there is a niche of the use case, like I explained, in which people have an IDP but don't know how to couple that with the current radius infrastructure, and don't even want to set it up, because if you are in the cloud, yeah, it has no sense. And Google is not the only cloud provider that is insufficient for the radius. As Guy said, the Microsoft Azure is the second one. So, answered.
Hey. Right. Hugo, welcome back. Can you continue?
Okay, yes. So sorry about that. I think there was a fiber cut somewhere, so that affected some of us. So, but thank God I'm back online. So as I said, Eduroam takes away the problem of shared password. In the past, when you get visitors on your campus, you have to give them a shared password that they use on their devices, and that brings a lot of security issues on the campus. And Eduroam also, it makes campuses very attractive for meetings and conferences, because if a visitor comes to campus and can easily connect to a network and get access to the internet, they will always want to be there. These days, there's no hotel that you go that there's no internet service. If there's no internet service, nobody will be there, or they will not want to go to such places. So it makes campuses very, very attractive. And it makes Wi-Fi available for students and faculty worldwide. So as your students move from campus to campus and traverse the world, they're able to get connected and constantly be connected. You know, these days, internet is like oxygen. If it's taken off, you want to suffocate and die. So therefore, you want to have internet all the time working for you. And this gives us a very secure and easy way of getting online without campus IT support, as I mentioned earlier. So all that said, to be or to participate in this novel idea of a thing that we're talking about, Eduroam, in Ghana, you first of all have to be a member of GANET, which is the research and education network here in Ghana. And then also needs to have identity management system like Active Directory or LDAP or the like. That have your user credentials stored that you can manage. And then you also need to have a Radius server and then link that Radius server to your identity management system. And of course, you need to have a campus Wi-Fi in place. And this Wi-Fi gets authenticated or authenticates users using the Radius server that talks to the identity management system. And through this, you are able to verify those who are connecting on your network and be able to account for that as well. Ghana currently, as Kennedy mentioned earlier, we are a member of Eduroam Federation. We have signed the document, and we are currently operating the Eduroam service here in Ghana. I must say that this was signed late 2017, and to date we have about six of the member institutions who have deployed Eduroam, and we have a total of 3,000 access points deployed, in Ghana so far, working with the Eduroam service. One campus, where I am, University of Ghana, we have over 1,000 access points deployed. Our sister institution, KNUST, have about 1,500 access points also deployed. We have smaller universities that have 200 access points. Some have 300 access points deployed. So in all, we are making our baby steps, getting Eduroam deployed here in Ghana. And as much as possible, we try to use technology that is very affordable. Those who can afford the top range devices, they do so, but as much as possible, we try to get the best affordable device to deploy Wi-Fi on our campuses. But again, we have some challenges in adoption because Garnet has a membership of up to 33 as at now, but currently we have only 6 of the institutions who are connected or who have deployed Eduroam. So that means there's a lot of work to be done. And why this gap there? The main constraint here is huge infrastructure deficit that we have on our campuses. Most of the campuses are now trying to get their network properly structured, and then before moving on to get Wi-Fi on top of their network infrastructure. And majority of them lack authentication systems in place. So some places they use shared password or put some password on the standalone access point, and this does not work well for what we plan to do. And because all these are happening because of funding issue, most of them are not getting the needed funding to be able to get the right devices to get this deployed. And last but not the least, there are technical challenges. The expertise are not there. The gap is huge, and we need to continue to train ourselves and get support from the community to beef up our technical expertise in the area. So now, how are we planning to deal with these challenges? So as I said, we working to provide support to members with infrastructure deficits by pointing them to the right device, affordable devices that they can easily get to deploy on their campus. I mentioned University of Ghana, we have over 1,000 access points, but that did not start like a one project. We started with 10 access points back in 2009 through the help of NSRC. So from 10 access points, we've grown to over 1,000 access points. So, do it in an incremental way, and then you eventually get there. But by just having the blueprint as to how you are going, and then adding on, and then expanding the infrastructure on campus. As I speak, we still have some dark spots on campus, but we are working gradually to get those fixed. And I must say, government is also supporting some of the universities to improve on their infrastructure need on campus to be able to provide campus Wi-Fi on the campuses. I mentioned earlier on the authentication issue. So at Garnet level, we're working with Workrent to see how we can take advantage of the Edu ID Africa infrastructure to integrate that into the Eduroam fabric, so that those who do not have authentication system on their campus can build their authentication in the cloud that they will be able to use to do most of their authentications on campus, and also get that to connect to Eduroam as well. And of course, we're planning to do a lot of technical workshops. Hands-on technical workshop. Unfortunately, COVID has put a kind of a hold on us, but yes, looking at ways and means how to get this achieved, so that we can get a lot of our technical guys trained on the best practices as well. And most of the top management do not sometimes appreciate the need for the Eduroam deployed on campus, because they don't move around a lot, or majority or few of them get to travel, and therefore they see the need of it. But majority don't travel outside their home institution. So Eduroam is like, it's nice, but we really need Eduroam. But I believe if we're able to get Eduroam to public spaces that's off campus, that when they walk around town and they see Eduroam, they get connected securely and have access to resources, then it will kind of change the dynamics as to how, or the adoption of Eduroam in the region, because now that is a big challenge that we need to find a way to see how the service can be deployed, maybe in public libraries, in museums, in places that they can easily get access to this service. And then also, we have to create more awareness on the campuses. I must admit that most of our users do not know about Eduroam. It's a struggle because most of the IT guys are struggling with the infrastructure, trying to get it working. So that is a gap that we're trying to see how that can be addressed, create more awareness on the campuses, that students are aware that, oh, okay, Eduroam is available here. And one of the strategies that we are considering is to make Eduroam the only SSID, so that once they are connected to Eduroam, when they move around, they will still be connected wherever they go. So that's one of the things that we are planning to do. So we, this year, aggressively planning to make sure that our IDP or Garnet Federation is working perfectly, so that we'll be able to take advantage of the services that are available, and also see how this can be extended outside the campuses to make Eduroam service widely available. So that's all I have, and thank you very much for your attention for my short presentation. Thank you.
And thank you to Emmanuel for giving us a peek into what is happening in Ghana. There's already a lot of discussions going on in the question and answer session, so you can visit there to see what's happening. Right, so we have another shining example when it comes to the deployment of Eduroam in Africa. And we have two officials from that NRO, Rainy, to tell us what's happening there, plans for the future, how Eduroam is impacting education and research in Uganda. So I now hand over to Helen and Brian. Helen and Brian both officials from Rainy, and Helen is in charge of the systems and software, whilst Brian handles he's the senior network engineer of network operations. So Helen and Brian, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ifa. You can see you've given us 20 minutes. So we've got to fully utilize them. Allow me to share my screen. Hope everyone can see my screen.
Yeah, I can see.
Oh, sorry. A minute. Yes, as I share my screen, as Ifa's introduced us, Helen Nakawungu. I work with the Research and Education Network for Uganda. With me is Mr. Brian Masiga, who is a senior network engineer, also working with the Research and Education Network for Uganda. Okay, looks like, don't know what's happening. Okay, so we are going to be taking you through Metro Eduroam, our Metro Eduroam setup. That is why we chose to go Metro Eduroam, the different deployment scenarios, traffic and user profiles, the benefits, the challenges, and finally, the future where we are planning to go. So to begin with,
Helen, can you move your slides into presentation mode, please?
sure. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. So I was on the, I finished my outline or overview of what we are going to go through. Why we chose to go Metro Eduroam, different deployment aspects, also traffic and user profiles, the benefits and challenges, and finally, the future. So why we chose to go in this direction? Traditionally, REN used to help member institutions to deploy or set up Eduroam within the institution network. That is during the direct engineering assistance, termed as, or short form as DEAs. That means the service was available only within the institution boundaries. Metropolitan Eduroam was meant to break those boundaries and allow researchers to access the service beyond the campus premises. The service was extended to different areas of the cities, including malls, apartments, hostels, coffee places, among other areas. It's good to note that the demand for the Metropolitan Eduroam was boosted by the COVID-19 pandemic, whereby researchers, students, and lecturers were forced to go off campuses due to the countrywide lockdown. Therefore, to enable researchers continue carrying out research on a secure and trusted network, we felt a need to extend the service beyond the campus or institution boundaries. In the traditional setup, normal traditional setup, we have a typical campus network right from the RENU side. Hope you can see my pointers. Yes, right from the RENU side to the campus border router, to the core switch, then down here to the different access switches. So we have the federation level radius server, which sits within the RENU network. It communicates to all radius servers within the country and also is aware of what is happening externally. So down here within the campus network, we also have what we call a radius server, which handles all local authentications. And behind it, of course, there is a database of users for the institution. So generally, that is the traditional setup. So users connecting to the Eduroam SSID, which is being broadcasted by this access point. they are later authenticated through the Radius server. That is, if at all these users are local to the institution, or else if at all they are visitors, their requests are sent to the federation level Radius servers, which is aware of the visitors' rooms. So that is the typical setup that we were doing previously or traditionally. On setup, the second setup of our Eduroam, that is Metropolitan Eduroam. No, can you see? Sorry. So we have a setup, one with a service provider. I can't tell why my screen is not moving. Okay, I think it has finally moved. So we have a setup one. With this setup, we have the REN network on the left-hand side of this diagram. Then we have the service provider network on the right-hand side. There is a router on the REN network where the Radius proxy server and also the DHCP server connects to. This, as I mentioned earlier, this Radius proxy server handles requests or is meant to proxy requests to the FIRL, and also the DHCP server down here gives out IP addresses, both V6 and V4, and also gives out DNS definitions, and at the same time acts as a gateway. So on the right-hand side of the diagram, which is the SP side or the service providers network, we have access points that broadcasts Eduroam. These access points have private IP addresses, and actually they are netted to the service providers' public IP addresses. During authentication, APs down on the service provider's side communicate with the Radius proxy server through the IXP connection up here, which is between the RENO network and the service provider side. Also, there is a direct connection here between the RENO network and the service provider network through that Vlan X. This connection is meant for IP address assignments to users that have been successfully authenticated. And at the same time, the same connection carries user traffic to destinations like Facebook, Google, among others. So that is the first setup. We also have a second setup with the service provider. I can call it service provider 2. The setup on the REN side is the same. I don't know why it's taking long to load, but to eventually load. So the setup on the left-hand side of the diagram is the same as previously in the diagram I'd already showed you. On the service provider's side, the access points have private IPs. In this case, there is no NATing happening. I don't know why the diagram is not coming up. Okay. Yeah, as the diagram loads in the right way, I think I will continue. So I was mentioning that in this case, there is no NATing on the APs that are on the service provider side. They communicate directly with the RENO's Radius proxy server through that VLAN Y. The VLAN Y, it's in this area, yes, this connection. So through that VLAN, and which is meant to carry radius authentication traffic between the access points and the radius proxy server. Also, the same link or connection carries VLAN X, which is meant to carry user traffic that is destined to Google and Facebook. So of these two setup, of course, we have merits and demerits, and we felt it's important to take you through these merits and demerits. So on the first setup, the previous setup, in case the IXP connection goes off, the authentication will have to go through any other nearby connection where we meet with the service provider 1. This means an increase in the round trip time, hence slow authentication process. So one of the merits of setup 1, we saw the private IP space on the service provider side cannot affect the IP space on the service on the NRO side, because we saw that we are doing nothing there. But in the setup, or in setup 2, which is the current diagram being displayed, if the IP address deployment is not done rightly, we may end up with IP address conflicts. Yes, so moving on with the traffic profile. So it's important to note that these kind of metrics were captured since October last year, and that is the period when we commissioned our metropolitan Eduroam. So we noted that in October we hit 10 Mbps. November we increased to 14. The growth in we kept on growing to 16 in December. In January, I think this is the period when our government lifted lockdown. I think that's why there is some bit of a reduction, and we hit 7 Mbps. So this diagram shows successful logins, and here we consider the top 10 RIMs. I think it's a presentation issue. I see the first bar is still missing, but the first bar has details of UCU, and with UCU actually has the highest successful logins, hitting to 27,207 successful logins, followed by Mengo Hospital, then Renu, and others followed. This graph also shows unique users, and in this case, again, UCU tops up with 400 unique users, followed by Mengo Hospital, RHSP, and other RIMs follows. Still, we are considering top 10 RIMs. The next graph shows successful logins in total, again considering top 10 RIMs, and we can see that the UK tops up, followed by UCU and other RIMs. Same to this graph. This is considering the campus Eduroam. UCU still tops up, followed by RHSP, and followed by other RIMs as being indicated. So on successful logins, considering Metro Eduroam vis-a-vis our traditional Eduroam or campus Eduroam, we can see that on successful logins, we hit 58.3% on the Metro Eduroam successful logins, Then campus or Eduroam within institutions, we hit 41.7%. So on unique users, campus Eduroam vis-a-vis Metro Eduroam, we see between October to date, actually, the utilization of Metro Eduroam has hit 90.7% vis-a-vis campus Eduroam, which is at 9.3%, indicating that utilization of Eduroam outside campus is at a higher peak. All right, so we move on to challenges. No, not challenges, benefits of this Metro Eduroam. The first benefit, there has been an increased demand from institutions to deploy Eduroam in their institutions in order to enjoy the free Metropolitan Eduroam, which RENU offers to its institutions. Then also more institutions have a strong commitment to the NREN right now because of this service. Then the extension of the service to the Metro Eduroam, the extension of the service to the metro city areas rather than being only within the institution boundaries has also been seen as a benefit. On challenges, it's good to note that we have also challenges. One of them is lack of visibility on the performance of the service providers network, that is between the access points to the handoff point with the service provider. Therefore, we can't measure quality of service on the side of access point or how our users are experiencing this service. So no control also on the expansion, and also we can't determine where access points should be deployed. Some areas really, they are slum areas, and we've really recorded very low traffic volumes in those areas. Also, we have a challenge with of a failure to determine a good pricing model from these several service providers that we're currently using. Okay, moving on. The future, we are planning to roll out Eduroam across all major cities in the country. Then also we are exploring the Wi-Fi mon for service monitoring. Also, we are enlisting other service providers within the country so that we see how to extend the service to other areas. This is a simple Eduroam map showing the metropolitan region, but we have another map which is zoomed in clearly, which shows points in the regions of or cities of Kampala, Mukono, and Entebbe. This is how the access points are distributed. Yes, so this marks the end of our presentation. In case of any questions, we welcome them. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Helen. Such a great presentation full of stats and experiences to share. So thanks so much. I guess Brian is here. So please, if you have any question, you can put it in the chat or in the question and answer section, and Brian and Helen will respond to it. All right, already we are receiving great reviews in the chat for this presentation. Okay, so as we wait for question and answers, I guess we can just move to the next presentation, and then we'll have more time maybe after the next presentation for discussions, right? So the next presenter is Guy Halls, and Guy happens to be the executive officer when it comes to TNI at Tenet in South Africa, a role that he's been in charge of for quite some time now. And he also spans that with the SAFI, South African Identity Federation, also part of Eduroam NRO, the uptake Consortium, certification services, as well as DNS and DNSSEC operations. Guy has a lot up his sleeves. Just hand over to Guy now to tell us about what is happening in South Africa when it comes to Eduroam. Guy, over to you.
Thank you very much. So it's very difficult in this sort of time to figure out quite what to talk about. And what I've done is I've divided this talk into two halves, really. The first half, I'll talk a little bit about our operations in South Africa. And in the second half, I want to touch a little bit more on what my two predecessors have spoken about and where the digital divide fits into this, because that's something I think that's quite important in the African context. So just to give a kind of broad overview of Eduroam in South Africa, we started doing this in 2012. Kenneth beat us to it. And right now we have 25 of the 26 public universities in South Africa making use of Eduroam on their campuses. And that equates to about 1 million end users in South Africa. We have a project to connect the TVET colleges, tertiary vocational colleges as well, which should double that number of users. Right now, kind of in a pre-pandemic world, we were processing about 2.5 authentications a second. We see about 130,000 unique devices a year. Miro talked a little bit about the split between national and international. In our case, really only 5% of our roaming is international, and that was before the pandemic. It's 0% now because there's no international travel. And so for us, the national roaming is a big thing. Just to talk about the way we structure our operations, we're going to talk about the things that we believe are important in making the way we roll Eduroam out run smoothly. We offer a number of value-added services like statistical reporting, like integration with CAT and managed IDP. We offer the Eduroam visitor access service, and I could talk at length about all of those things, but really I'm going to talk about the core of our operations at the moment, the real stuff that makes the authentication work. Configuration management, I think, is a big deal, and particularly as things scale out. We use the DJ NRO, which was established by written by the Greek NREN, and we use that really to allow our end clients to do their own configuration management of their radius, and that we have largely automated everything out of the back end of that. So it writes radius config, and in our case, it generates a pull request in GitHub. That also generates a ticket in our ticketing system, and there are some buttons that get pushed to deploy that into production. And that's really largely automated. We don't write config by hand anymore. We haven't written config by hand for 5 years. And I think that that's really good, because it means that we know exactly how our configuration is built. It's built in a consistent way. And that there are no nasty hacks that kind of typify how this was started out. And that's good for producing a stable, reliable service. And just to talk a little bit about GitHub and why we use GitHub. This could really be any source repository. We like the fact that we have tracking of every change we've ever made. But GitHub solves a problem for us in that it gives me a way of doing offsite backups without having to manage offsite backups. So we effectively, we used to pay GitHub some money. We now have a non-profit account in GitHub, which gives us private repositories for free. And effectively, I've outsourced my backup problem to some extent to them. They back up my configuration for me. We also use DJI NRO to link into Eduroam Cat, which Miro spoke about, and that means that deploying things like new users into Cat is done through the same management tool as everything else. So the entire infrastructure we've built Ansible playbooks for. Those are all sitting in GitHub as well for the same reasons. We use Ubuntu Cloud Image, and that lets us completely deploy things through Ansible. It's very DevOps-ish, and the ish because we lack some of the testing things and that we would really like to build into it. It's not containerized. We'll get there eventually. Right now it's virtual server. So somebody asked about specs. We are running 2 Radius servers, one in Johannesburg and one in Cape Town. So that's about 1,500 kilometers apart. Each of those virtual servers are very small. They have 1 gigabyte of memory. They have 2 virtual CPUs. They have 10 gigabytes of disks. We don't store logging on them. We offload logs to a separate syslog server. And they're idle. They really don't struggle. So in terms of deployment, even at 120,000 authentications a day, the specs for the FLR servers in this are minimal. We run a high availability architecture, and this really was a development about 3 or 4 years ago when we started to realize quite how much that national roaming mattered and quite how much our end users depended on this. We are now in the situation where if the roaming service goes down, it's noticed within minutes. And so we needed to build an architecture that would allow us to do maintenance and things like that, and also deal with physical infrastructure failures. And so what we have is, we tell our IDPs and SPs to configure 2 IP addresses in their configs with a failover in that. Those 2 IPs are each advertised into BGP from 2 locations, one in Johannesburg, one in Cape Town. And so we have a total of 4 instances of Radius running on 2 servers, and BGP handling some failover between those. And what that means is that if we lose one physical server, both those IPs still answer Radius. They answer off separate instances of RedSec proxy in physically running on the same server. In our testing, we see failover happening in about 2 seconds. So that's really good. And what that actually means is that with a little bit of planning, we very recently upgraded all of our boxes from Ubuntu 18 to Ubuntu 20, and we took them out of production. In fact, when I say upgraded, we didn't upgrade. We deleted the Ubuntu 18 one and we installed an Ubuntu 21. And we did that with no downtime at all. And that as people start to depend on this service, that becomes really important. That planning starts to happen. We could not afford to take this down for more than a few minutes now, without really seriously impacting people's use of it. So just moving on a little bit. So the other thing that we consider to be really quite important is monitoring. And so we do monitoring of every IDP that we have configured. We are using open source tools. RAD-EAP test is a wraparound EPOL test that comes from CESNet, one of the European NRENs. We use the open monitoring distribution. It's really just a Nagios clone. And we've kind of integrated that into DG NRO so that all our monitoring config is built automatically. We don't have to add things to monitoring. When things get added into the configuration database, they get added into monitoring automatically. So if you look at the slides, there are some links, including links to the DJ NRO integrations that we've built ourselves to make this all work. What happens with our monitoring is that we are doing in DJ NRO, we're collecting test credentials. We use those test credentials to do real EAP tests and to give IDPs a perspective of what happens when their users are not on their campus. It's really hard as an IDP to know, will the service work for my users when they are roaming? And that's really what we're trying to answer here is, will the service work for my users when they're roaming? We also provide a reciprocal test arrangement where we give test credentials to SPs to allow them to test what their service looks like for roaming users on their campus. And that's also automated. It's built out of the same DJ NRO database. It happens automatically. And we've found that building the monitoring and the notifications that go with that monitoring. So if a realm becomes unreachable, we send an automated notification to the IDP administrator of that. That's really gone a long way to improving the perception of the service. If you look at Twitter, you'll see a lot of bad comments about Eduroam, and that's kind of understandable. People rant when things don't work, but proactively monitoring and proactively telling IDPs when things stop working has gone a long way to improving the perception. Unfortunately, IDPs don't always listen. And in fact, if you look at that screenshot that's there of our monitoring system, there is an IDP there that has not worked for a very long time, and they don't really seem to want to solve that problem. Behind the scenes and not shown there, we also monitor the BGP instances in our things. We monitor the radius in our FLR servers, and we monitor the FTX throughput so that we notice when authentications start to drop off. And that's really the kind of core of our operations as they are today. It's really designed to be as hands-off now for us as possible, and to automate. And as I said, that's half of what I want to talk about. The other half is the half I'm more passionate about, where we can use Eduroam as an enabler. And in South Africa, we have a huge problem. We are one of the most unequal societies in the world. That aerial shot there is of a location not very far from where I'm sitting right now in Hout Bay. And on the left-hand side, we have a very wealthy suburb, and on the right-hand side, we have a township. And the dividing line there is very stark. What you can't see is that that's the top of the hill, and it's one side of a hill versus the other side of the hill. And for $35 US, a user in each of those things can get completely different things. If you live in a wealthy suburb, they are well served by fiber in South Africa. I can get a gigabit a second at home if I want to pay for it, but for my $35 US, I can get 15 megabits a second uncapped fiber for a month. And if I live in a township where there's only mobile data, I can afford 10 gigabytes. And that's a huge, huge differential for students. I presented about this at the Ubuntu Connect conference, and I talked quite a lot about what that meant. And specifically in South Africa, we have a huge legacy from apartheid, where the poorest of our communities are also the furthest away, And so that particular slide comes straight out of my UbuntuNet presentation, but it kind of shows how far students are traveling. A University of Cape Town student can travel 40 kilometers a day to get to campus. We have huge issues with public transport. Those pictures of buses and trains burning were all in 2019. That problem hasn't gone away. There's massive overcrowding of public transport. And so if you're a student who's living in a township in South Africa, your experience is vastly different to if you're a student living in a wealthy suburb. And that's something that we feel that Eduroam can help fix. And so what we did in 2018, 2019 with the city of Cape Town was we looked at where the city had public libraries, and we started trying to deploy Eduroam into public libraries. And that map in that slide there shows the location of public libraries in the city of Cape Town. We're very fortunate that the city of Cape Town has a lot of public libraries in places that really matter. And we rolled that service out, and that was the results of the first 3 months. We pushed 5 terabytes of data out through city libraries. And so really to re-emphasize what Renu was talking about, getting Eduroam off the campus really makes a huge, huge difference in terms of addressing digital divides. And particularly in our case, we are really trying to aggressively push Eduroam not into wealthy suburbs, not into shopping centers, but into townships. And as far as we can to get the wireless access closer to where the student lives. There are some other things we've learned along the way to this. And if you're following the slides that I shared, I added this during the presentation earlier because I think it's something that needs to be spoken about. We need to look at what devices people are using. When we talk about cellular phones, the media would have you believe that everybody has the latest smartphone, you know, be it your Samsung or your Apple phones. That's not real. So what we find through analytics in that is that actually really a lot of our students are sitting at the very bottom end of this range. And for $45 I can go and buy a smartphone. It's got a 4-inch screen, it has a gig of RAM, it runs Android Go. Android Go doesn't exist outside the developed market. If you don't know what a 4-inch screen looks like, there's the smartphone on the screen there running Eduroam. And one of the things that we've started trying to make sure we do is that we start testing things on the devices that are in our students' hands. So the reason I have one of these phones sitting on my desk is because if we are pushing out things like Eduroam Cat, do they work on a 4-inch screen with 1 gig of RAM running Android Go? So we're trying to start giving feedback around those things, pushing them back into the people who are doing the development of this. And that's really about making sure that we're pushing the right thing. It's one thing getting the Wi-Fi coverage in, it's another thing making sure it works on the device that's sitting in a student's hands. I want to talk a little bit about public libraries and why public libraries. We're very fortunate in South Africa that we do have quite a lot of public libraries. There are 1,879 libraries in the last survey that was done across the country. They vary very widely. In some cases, we have 200-year-old libraries. The top right there is the National Library of South Africa. Incidentally, all the libraries in those photos have Eduroam in them. The top right there is the National Library of South Africa. It's been around for 200 and something odd years. And at the bottom right there is a containerized library sitting in a township. They're hugely different, but they have some things in common. One of the things is that librarians tend to be very sympathetic to the needs of information literacy. If you go to a librarian and you say, I want to bring students through your door and I want to have them sit at a desk, our experience has been they're very supportive of that. For them, people through the door is a good thing. They tend to have desks, and that's quite useful because we want people to be able to sit and work. We're really not trying to provide internet so that people can sit and watch YouTube. We're trying to provide internet so people can complete their studies. And they're generally quite supportive of people sitting there for a long time. So we focused on libraries because there was a huge overlap between the academic project of a university and what libraries are really all about. That doesn't mean that we're not interested in shopping centers and taxi ranks and airports and all of those things. Those things are fantastic as well, but there's a lot of synergy in libraries, and so we've put a lot of our effort into libraries for that reason. And we've been fortunate that in many libraries we've dealt with, they have existing infrastructure. This little phone of mine is beeping on my desk because I turned it on for the first time for a very long time. That they have existing infrastructure, and that existing infrastructure has allowed us to kind of more rapidly roll out in places like the city of Cape Town. That's not true of all libraries. That little containerized library at the bottom had nothing. It had electricity. That was about the only useful thing it had. But the municipalities are also trying to actively put IT into these things. So trying to leverage and build with a relationship with those municipalities when they do that. And really that goes back to what I was saying. We want to get Eduroam on the right-hand side of that picture. We want to get Eduroam in the heart of the places that really matter. And I think that's kind of the key message I want to drive here is look at Eduroam not just as a thing on a university campus, not as something that benefits the students who already have good access, but look at how we can use Eduroam to benefit the people on the wrong side of the digital divide. And that's what I have for you.
All right. Thank you very much, Guy. In fact, your closing thought is very, very important that we have to look at Eduroam beyond the campuses and bring it into the metropolis in other areas where students are found or may be found. Okay, so now we want to move into the discussion segment, and I'll hand over to Wakran CSO, Omo. Omo, please, you can take over.
Oh, thank you very much, Guy Herling, for those presentations. Guy, I think the last half of that presentation of yours was actually quite. It evoked some emotions that I will be really happy if we can resolve some of them with Eduroam. But one thing that seems to sort of shine through, probably because of the impact of the pandemic, is how we can actually use Eduroam in off-campus applications in Africa. The Renew Metro is a good example, and I can imagine that quite a lot of students live immediately outside campus or in other sort of groups of people living in places where there can be a concerted plan if there's some coordination. This part of the session is where we just sort of talk freely about the different slides. If we have any questions, I see there's a question from Seth Tibenda that Miro wanted to answer live. Miro, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, for everybody. I mean, it would be good to understand the use case. And for that, I mean, what exactly is the role or a case you want to monitor? It depends. According to the use case or position from which you want to monitor, and many users we can advise on a possibility to use tools or solutions. Actually, Guy talked about some of that, because if you are a national roaming operator, we really can't help you a lot in checking your own IDPs. We can advise on tools. And Guy had a interesting presentation showing how they are doing the checkup of IDPs. Also, on the other hand, checking the SPs or monitoring SPs is something that we do deal with that. But as you can guess from my slides, or you could have guessed, monitoring is a strange beast, and we can monitor infrastructure pretty successfully, but monitoring the end user experience is still ongoing development. It's still something that we chase, because at the end, you know, there might be some combination with Wi-Fi modes. I have seen that on the slides too. Yeah, Seth and the others, if you could be precise in a way, what exactly is your role and what exactly you want to check, then I can kind of provide advice or a service. Depends on the needs. For some situations, we have ready-made solutions. For some, we can advise on how to proceed.
When I read Seth's question, by the way, Seth, if you're listening, you can actually unmute and clarify. But when I read his question, it sounds to me like he's talking about, campus identity and access management system, something to manage his users on campus. Seth, if you can unmute, let's hear you. He's typing in. So yes, so I was right. So it's campus IAM, that is a
yeah. Campus identity management is the biggest of them all, because at the end, it might be the identity management system that you use for several purposes, while Eduroam is just one of them. But in principle, if you want to do Eduroam only, then you can rely on managed IDP. The only thing here is that your national roaming operator, should list your institution, your campus, as the and list you as a possible user of managed IDP service. And for that, we can deal that offline with your roaming operator. I discovered that there is no private mail of mine anywhere. So here it is. And if you feel better, you can write down directly to me and to all. Just a second. I've sent it only to some of you.
Now let me this topic of campus identity, because in Manuel Togo's presentation he sort of touched on that as a problem as well.
Yes, indeed. So it's either you do it yourself, you host it somewhere else, or you decide to go for an easy solution with managed IDP. It really depends what are your goals, because at the end maybe you want to do the web-based authentication, you want to do AAI, federated identity, whatever, and in respect to that, then you need a proper identity management system. So then there is the Google solution, there is the Microsoft Azure solutions. I mean, it's endless.
Yes. Well, we can take for granted that every campus would want to do identity federation, Eduroam. They would have other sort of systems to connect to. They would have student registration systems. So it is an identity system has to be the building block. But I wanted to hear from Brian, Helling, and Kennedy and Guy. Is this also an issue in your environments? So you can take turns or just sort of unmute and speak, please.
So I'll have a go at this. Sure, it is. I think we have the benefit that compared to what I've experienced when I've presented elsewhere, we have relatively good identity management in our universities in South Africa. But as we increasingly deal with the TVET colleges, we learn that some of them are managing identity in spreadsheets and that. And it is a problem. It's a huge problem that we spend a lot of time teaching stuff about the basics of identity before we can do any of this sort of more useful things. You can't get Eduroam to work until you have some sort of identity service. You can't get federated identity to work until you have identity on your own campus. And so it is something that we find is a huge challenge. And I'm interested if Kennedy is still around, if he wants to talk about this because they have a more centralized approach to this, I think.
I see. Guy, to just contribute on it. For us, yes, we realize that, yes, some of our smaller institutions really didn't have basically identity databases in place. And we also had looked at the option of doing basically the Eduroam managed IDP. But now in the country, what we ended up doing is to do basically just a multi-tenant LDAP based system that now the small institutions that don't have capacity are able to use the identity, basically the multi-tenant identity service for the different systems, platforms, and tools that they want to integrate with the identity database. So that's where that's how we opted to support some of them, because some had systems that really you couldn't use a certificate-based, basically, or use certificates to authenticate. So we opted to do managed, basically it's a multi-tenant identity database. So for each user, we are able to, each institution, we are able to actually slice for them their own basically realm with all the basically organizational structure on the LDAP directory. So probably, Guy, I'm not sure that answers what you wanted me to.
Yeah, it does.
Give input to. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So Kennedy, so what happens then is that essentially Kenneth provides the IAM service for these universities.
Not for the big universities, for the small ones, because the big universities have expertise. This service we are mostly providing for those who really don't have HR capacity that is adequate for setting identity databases and managing identity databases. Because for some, we realize that you set up for them once, you are able to train their people, then also there is a high turnover in some of the small institutions. So you find now there is a new person, and before they know how things are working, we were spending a lot of time doing that support. So we opted to just do a centralized system so that they're able to leverage on it for some of the systems that they would like to integrate with the identity database. Thank you.
I don't see any raised, oh, there's a raised hand. Bubakar wants to, Bubakar?
Yes, Omo, I was just wondering, we have heard about, concerns of universities giving capacity to students or whatever academic people, are using the network. So is it not maybe time to to collaboratively work on a very short document to show the advantages of Eduroam. Because if you look at what Emmanuel Togo was saying, for instance, that the admin people who decide don't see the advantage or the benefit of Eduroam. So it's not the time for all of us to sit together and to, do a very, very short paper, a very short, there are some works, really to show what are the advantages and why we should go for Eduroam, just to move forward.
Well, that sounds like a policy brief of some sort.
Policy brief.
Yes.
Policy brief. Yeah. A very short policy brief.
It can be amongst the things we do. The whole idea here is, especially in this discussion, is to sort of pull these ideas into some plan for the year. So I see that there's going to be work that we need to do on this level. One side facing the institutions, but I have to come back to this off-campus Eduroam. Something tells me that, that's where we need to even pay more attention and can get more stakeholders involved, even if it is the library idea that, Guy mentioned. Yes, in other areas, parts of Africa, we might not have physical buildings that are public libraries, but the whole idea of extending, what we're doing in Lipsense with academic libraries into the community via virtual hubs and community networks sounds like another space where Eduroam in Africa could really play a significant role. So maybe we need to pull all of this together.
Just a thought on that. I mean, off campus, but also we've realized that it also matters where on your own network this is deployed. So one of the things that we found was that we as I said, we have it deployed at 25 of the 26 public universities, and they have rolled Eduroam SPs out in all of their major campuses. But a lot of them have satellite offices and little satellite examination centers and things like that, where they haven't done it, simply because they don't have the incentive to do that. And actually, earlier this year, I'm just going to quickly share this. Earlier this year, we did a mapping exercise of that, and it looks like that. And on that map, the blue places are campuses that have SPs. And the gray things are all those little satellite nodes that are already connected to our network that don't have Eduroam. And so one of the things that we've kind of been working on is how, as an NREN, we might incentivize our existing institutions to roll out Eduroam more broadly, even in the bits of infrastructure that we already control. And that goes back to something that Kennedy said in answer to one of the questions. They offered additional bandwidth to deal with the guests. We've been considering something similar. We've been considering offering rebates for people who roll Eduroam out on sites that they wouldn't otherwise roll it out. We haven't figured out how to do that yet, but we've realized that that's something we need to think about.
Yes, because we were also thinking about some project in Ghana, because Wakran is based in Ghana, so we thought Eduroam might be a good way to sort of give back to the community a little bit. So the internet access seems to be the stumbling block for NRENs to sort of contribute to such, so we can sort of close that gap. But that's what I really hope we will do we will continue to do moving on from this event, but I can see Emmanuel Togo has his hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. I think the question I want to ask, Guy has kind of said something little about it. In this presentation, they're planning to send the Eduroam service to public libraries where they get a lot of traffic from. And I believe that there is a cost to getting this service to these places. And I want to find out who is carrying this cost and how is this managed? If we are deploying the service at a public spaces, who carries the cost that of the service that is going there, having in mind that Eduroam is a free service for members. Thank you.
So I'm happy to answer from our perspective, but Helen might also want to chip in on how Renew's model for this works. So we don't have a single model. In fact, one of the things that we've realized is that we need to be very flexible in this. In some of the places we're doing this, in fact, the very first place where we deployed off-campus into libraries was in 2015 in a small rural town, as it happens, and that was entirely funded by the university in that town as a social good for themselves. That didn't have anything to do with the NRO. When we looked at the city of Cape Town, the wireless infrastructure, we were very fortunate, was there. And so we entered into a settlement-free agreement with the city where they backhaul the traffic across their infrastructure. They meet us at a peering point, and we carry the internet costs. That worked really well there. There are other places where we've entered into commercial arrangements, and we will continue to enter into commercial arrangements. I don't think that there is a single model that works. You have to read the situation and see what infrastructure is there and figure out how to make it work.
Okay, we'll start from where Guy has stopped for the Reno perspective. So like Guy says, there is no single model that works, but from the Reno perspective, Reno takes the burden of the commercials. So we work with two service providers. One of them, we sort of bought some capacity from them to do more than just Eduroam. They happen to have access points in different places of the country. And we leveraged that working relationship with them to also drop capacity for the Eduroam service. While for another service provider, like Helen pointed out in the presentation, was that we deal with them and they wanted to charge us based on per user session. So if, for example, a user happens to connect, then they'll charge us for that connection. So you can imagine that a user is passing by where an Eduroam hotspot is, and then he just connects automatically. And that would be counted as a session, a payable session. And that would be very unfair. So we got into a model whereby we decided to give us the number of bytes that have been downloaded. So we have a set minimum of the number of bytes for that. We can count that as a meaningful session. So if someone is just going via a petrol station and they connect to Eduroam, probably a few WhatsApps come through, we don't want that to be counted as a meaningful session. We want to have a minimum amount of bytes so that we determine that as a meaningful session. So it's a bit of a challenge and one of the challenges that we are having. But as we get more and more service providers to appreciate the role of the NRO and also appreciate what we are trying to do for the community given these times, then I think the commercial aspect gets a bit easier for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Brian said something very important there. Given these times, we have a fantastic opportunity presented to us by the pandemic. We need to seize that opportunity.
Okay,
so I was going to say something similar, but go on to go.
Yes. So we in Ghana, we are at a very early stage, trying to see how we can enter into some arrangement with service providers in the country to find a way to get them integrated into our network so that we can get our users offloading traffic onto our network at some fee. We are at a very early stage of that, hoping that that will go through. If we go through, then we'll probably have something to share in the future presentation. Thank you.
Well, it's been a great couple of hours, a few hours. I can see most people who started are still here. I think Bubakar's hand up is up again, but we have a few more minutes. Bubakar, do you want to say something quick before I close this?
Yes, I just wanted to say that, well, the off-network access is very important. I do think that it is very important that we try to implement in our networks EduVPN, SWAN, Eduroam, and trying to collaborate with the mobile operators, because when there was a lockdown, so you are not on campus, so you don't have access to the resources. So it's important that we find some collaboration with the mobile operators, at affordable prices, so that we can access our network from home in case of things like lockdowns due to COVID, and we don't know what is coming next. So it's very important. At Wakren, as you said, Omo, so we are thinking of maybe providing additional bandwidth to our members so that we can deploy Eduroam well, widely, as much as possible, so that our members are able to provide continued services to the end users. So that was my last comment on this. We were expecting to have the EC coming and saying some word, but it looks like they are locked in meetings. So unfortunately, but next time we will hear from the European Commission, because they are the ones who are supporting us on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bubakar. And it's like, almost time to go. So but I think it's only fair that we allow our panelists have 1 minute to serve, for us this is just the first of a series of events. We have a dedicated session in the Wakren conference dedicated to the Eduroam NRO operators. That will be a more restricted event, because I think what we would like to see happen is continued work with the GGC representatives and African NROs to sort of take some of these ideas that we have and formulate a plan that we can actually work to execute. So Bubakar has mentioned a policy brief. There are issues that Guy has raised in the past. So we would have some scheduled training, but around those trainings, we will need to find other areas at which we can collaborate on. So if I let every panel, is that Stephanie that's just connected?
I think Stephanie has connected. We just said that unfortunately the EC is not, she was cut in meetings and she could not, but Stephanie, if you are around, if you could please just say some words, because we are just about to close.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Apologies. and thank you for giving me the virtual floor. My intention was to assist to the whole workshop. I connected earlier this morning, and I was not expecting to take the floor because it was the moment I connected. I think Miroslav was making his presentation, and I thought it was more on the underlying technologies, which is, as you know, something I'm not familiar with. So I really don't think I can intervene. I can intervene on that on those aspects. Sorry if I'm talking in disconnection with what has been discussed, because then I could not assist, as you said. Well, for the EC, Eduroam is one of those low-hanging fruits of one of those applications that can help sometimes people understand why NROs can play a critical role. The services like Eduroam are sometimes better known than the underlying infrastructure themselves. So I think that's why this initiative by Wakren today to organize this roadshow was very interesting. I will be briefed on the key elements. I think there was recently a study that was carried out by Ubuntu.net in its own region, so in Eastern and Southern Africa, in their partner country, to see what was the uptake of Eduroam and what was the factors that were slowing down the deployment and the uptake of Eduroam. So also, I think there's an interesting exchange of experience that can take place. And that's what I will just briefly say, because again, sorry to recognize I didn't I didn't participate to all the discussion. Thank you.
Very much appreciated, Stephanie. Omo?
Well, thank you, Stephanie. It's a pity you missed the last couple of presentations, from other regions of Africa talking about the Eduroam deployment and how especially in South Africa, it's been used to address, in some ways, the digital divide. But we're 4 minutes past the hour, so I would say thank you very much to everybody who came, especially our panelists for taking out the time to update us on the state of Eduroam in Africa. Thank you very much.
Ok, bon week-end tout le monde. Merci.
Bye-bye.